Thank you very much for having us. This is a great conference. I go to quite a few conferences. First off, I love the French language. I am sorry I'm not speaking French, but I still want to. I think I would ruin the French language. So for those of you that don't speak English, I apologize in advance. I was asked to come before the actual talk, and we're going to be talking about what is the government's role or the public's role in securing the public network, the internet, our security. And they asked me, can you just please come as a hacker and actually talk about the threats out there? And it's really hard when you have 6,000 people at a conference to really nail down the area that works great for everybody. So what I wanted to do is just go over some of the basics that we would have as far as attacks. And I'm actually looking around for my clicker here. Give me 1 second. A couple phrases I will not be using today is cybersecurity. I have never met a cyber. I have heard that they may be nice people, but I don't secure them. We'll be talking more about information security. We'll be talking about resource security. We're not going to talk about advanced persistent threat because, quite honestly, it's a marketing term. I have, for the past decade, ran a firm that all we do is we're either breaking into organizations via through the computer or through the front door, or investigating this. And one of the things that you find over and over again, no matter how big and advanced the corporation is actually how easy these attacks actually are. It's a very, very strange time these days. So let me just give you a brief summary from my point of view of really the enemy of what we're facing. Now, for all of us here, we have budgets. We have skill sets. You want me to come in and help protect your environment? That's great. That works, but I'm going to have to get paid. Unfortunately, the hackers don't work quite as that way. There we go for the clicker. What we find is that a lot of the, quote, hackers, a lot of these malicious attackers, and not necessarily malicious attackers, they're very open in information sharing. And a hive mind, a group of people that are sharing information is going to be anything out there. This is a hacker site that I visit on a regular basis. And you will see stuff on here from kids saying, hey, I've taken control of my school's computer. How do I raise my grades? To, hey, I've taken control of an ATM. How do I actually take this money out of this ATM and launder it so I can actually take control of it? Now, this is not hidden. This is not deep, dark web that we usually talk about, the Tor network, any of this. This is wide open out there that anybody can ask. And in fact, one of the biggest myths about the malicious or the hacker community is they're very elite. We don't talk to people that don't have the skill sets. That's not true. In fact, if you're able to read up there, the very beginning one is beginning hacker. And some of the questions these people will ask, and questions I've gotten from children, 10, 11 years old, is how do I proxy my traffic through another country so law enforcement can't track me very easy? This is basic stuff that they're asking, and yet we as a blue team, as defensive, really have a hard time actually even grasping those concepts, yet it's being discussed on public forums. Again, you can see through here some of the questions that they're talking about. Now, most of the breaches that we see these days have to deal with malware. Again, we don't have to have any sort of vulnerabilities. We can put these on, it gives us access to it. I try to explain to a lot of professionals that may not even be in IT, may not understand Trojans. Why are Trojans so bad? I say, well, just imagine that the person who's attacked your computer actually is sitting on your desk. With a Trojan, I can actually go through, I can watch what's on your system, I can watch you, I can listen to you, I can actually even download, upload information at any time. There's a commercial playing just right before the first set of talks, and there was an actual commercial about a hacker interacting with someone, scaring them. I actually have dealt with cases. I had a case that I dealt with where the family was being told that there was a rifleman outside of their house, that they were going to shoot everybody in the family if they proceeded to call the cops. Ended up the person had a Trojan on one system, and through the webcam and through listening to the microphone was able to convince the family that their lives were in danger and were in peril. This is very, very simple stuff. Now, again, the question is really who can do this? One of the issues I run into with certain law enforcement agencies in my country is everything's China. Oh, China did this. Or now it's Russia. Russia did this. Russia did this. Really? Well, no one has this skill set. Again, if you go to these sites, you go look at what they're talking about. This is simplistic stuff. While I was there earlier this week, and again, this is a US-based board, and so I was there about 3 a.m. In Eastern time. There was 995 people on this board. This information is being shared by many. The tools that we're grasping to be able to protect ourselves against something like a Trojan are everywhere. Here's one of the more popular Trojans out there. It has its own Facebook page. Think about that for a second. One of the biggest tools being used to attack systems, to attack government computers, is advertising on Facebook. And again, it's very inexpensive to build these. What these attackers have determined is, I can sell this as help desk software. I can sell this for legitimate purpose. I can make money, and if someone else uses it illegally, it's not my fault. Now, if I really want to figure out what to do, I'll go to my favorite hacking tutorial site. Anybody else go to YouTube? I did a quick search. How to make a Trojan undetectable, and what we're talking about here is how to make a Trojan undetectable to antivirus. About 6,500 results came back. Now, the reason it's so small is the fact that hackers don't even call it Trojans. They call them rats. What we're starting to see is if you actually start to understand the defensive mechanisms that are out there, and go out in the expo, there's quite a few really good tools out there, is none of them can protect you completely. And unfortunately, a lot of them have some of the exact same weaknesses. And all someone has to do is go to YouTube and actually learn how to do this. This is information that's not being hidden. People are not having to pay top dollar for this. And at the end of the day, when your organization is breached, it doesn't matter if it was China, if it was Russia, or if it was a 12-year-old boy or girl that lives down the street. The result's the same. Your security has been compromised. Now, one of the other, I stick on Trojans quite a bit, again, because this is the tool. If you are worried about vulnerabilities, 0 days, understand those are few and far between. What we are actually concerned about in this field is, and as a hacker, is to get into your environment, stay in your environment, and get as much information as possible. This Trojan I found a couple days ago. A couple things I want to point out here. Number one, the top line states, you want to purchase this Trojan from me, I accept Amazon gift cards. This is a teenager that's figured out a way to essentially launder the paper trail. So you no longer can tell who bought it or who he sold it to. There is no money being exchanged. There's gift cards. 2, $50. What does $50 get me? $50 gets me software that I can now connect to other systems. Now again, this is sold as help desk software. It will actually allow me to turn on your microphone, turn on your webcam. It'll allow me to see what's typing. It'll even, these days, Bitcoin is very, very popular. It will actually allow me to use your computer to literally mine money. All for $50 US. And oh, by the way, antivirus starts to detect it, we'll send you a new version for free for life. The weapons of the hacker are plentiful. Again, the one site I showed you, I did a quick count, about 2,000 different Trojans out there. And only about 60% of them were actually detected by antivirus. Now, when we start talking about data, one of the big things people talk about is, well, hackers want data so they can sell that data. Well, that's somewhat true. And again, here's a perfect site. It's called Milk Road. Again, this is on Tor. If you're not familiar with Tor and it's not part of your job, don't go there. Just do it. Just trust us. Don't go there. There's really bad things on there you don't want to get caught up in. But as of last night, here are some French originating credit cards being sold on the black market. 21 American dollars for your credit card. Some of the other ones that may actually have chip and pin, I may actually have the pin, I may actually have a copy of your identification, may go for a little bit more, $500. But what you have to understand is it's not always motivated by money. It's not always motivated by government secrets. Sometimes it's just the thrill of the attack. This is what's called a doxing site. Everybody's heard of a doxing site? This is where information is given to free. Now, I usually show a few of these with some information sent out. Considering there are a lot of police officers here, and I'm not quite familiar with the French laws, I determined I don't really want to go to a French prison. Not part of my bucket list. So instead, I'm going to just show you a list. At the time, some of the most asked for information that was out there for free. Angelina Jolie, because why not? CIA Director John Brennan. I was on CNN about a year ago when his AOL account got hacked. The interesting thing was his information's been out there for years. Secret Service Director Julia Pearson. I can tell you this was focusing on the U.S. Quite honestly, most of you in this room will probably be on here. My information's on here. One of the biggest issues we run into is if my information is out there for free already, how are you going to even stop this? How are you even going to begin to go, well, we're just going to wait for this information to boil up in a transaction, and that's, again, where our information comes from. Now, about 10 years ago, Germany and the United Kingdom made what seemed like a very good tool, a very good law. They said, any hacking tool is illegal. Makes common sense. Except the details are when you start to look at the details, it's a little sketchier than that. When I attack a system, and again, just to be clear, I'm talking as a malicious attacker. I am actually a good guy. I am a white hat hacker. The tools that I use are the tools that most of your defensive teams and your system administrators will use for their everyday jobs. Why? Well, because they work on the systems, they get what I need done, and they're not going to be detected. And so one of the biggest problems you start to run into is when you make a law such as all hacking tools need to be outlawed is you've pretty much outlawed every single piece of technology out there. Some of the examples I have here, we looked at those Trojans. It's called a remote administration tool, or a RAT. That's what us hackers call it. Why? Because it's there to remotely administrate those systems. You know who else uses that? Help desk. Botnets. Botnets is nothing more than a form of cloud computing. It's distributed computing. Are we going to make that illegal? In our field, one of the biggest areas that we started working on is what we call attacks where we're living off the land. If I get on your Windows system, your Macintosh system, your Linux system, my goal is to use nothing but the tools provided in your operating system to actually hack your system. Now let's go back to those United Kingdom and German laws. That technically makes Linux, Windows, and Macintosh illegal. At first, it seems like a good law, but when we start to go through it, we start to find that the devil is in the details. Now, as an American, we've been through this for about the past 6-7 years, and I love the fact that France is looking into this and is actually having political discussions and public discussions. One of the big things that we really need to keep in mind is this is not about malicious attackers. This is not only about terrorism. This is not only about the bad things that happen by bad people. This is about securing our information. And we have to keep something in mind. Over the past decade, every year, there is a very reputable survey done in the United States. It's anonymous. And interestingly enough, some of the questions that they actually ask, I'm shocked people answer honestly. But what we find is when we talk about malicious attacks, less than 50% are actually external. Most of your malicious attacks are internal. Who you've probably heard of in the United States. BFC Bradley, Snowden, those names come to mind. Though they were not external attackers. However, when we start talking about actually securing our information, we have to realize that less than 10% of all security incidents are actually malicious. We say in the United States that hacking's sexy. People like to talk about it. Hackers are sexy. As a hacker, I thank you for believing that. However, it doesn't matter if Dave Chronister, the big evil hacker, gets in and steals all of your client data, or if Pierre, in accounts payable, accidentally mails it out to someone. The result's exactly the same. It's easy to think of the hacker. I want to finish with a slide, and again, I want to get to this debate. As a hacker, I love to get information, what we call footprinting, gathering legal information, and some of my colleagues sitting on this actual debate, amazing people. So I want to get to them. However, a few years ago, I did a talk, and the talk was about, give me your data. The fact that everybody's so worried about the blinking lights, the threat detection maps, the advanced persistent threats. Now I wanted to say, listen, I don't even have to worry about that. Information leakage is so bad out there, that I can get information without breaking the law. And so we went through it. Now, one that I came by through various means was an FTP site that was set up. Now, This is an FTP site. It was an anonymous FTP site that was created by an organization. The anonymous user has full access to the system. Now, if you also notice, if you're technical, you'll notice that that's the operating system there. As a hacker, now, all I have to do is go in there with very little skill, place my malware, reboot the system, and let the operating system install my malware. Now, I don't speak French. Fortunately, my wife is the daughter of a first-generation French-Canadian, so she speaks a little bit of French. She tends to cuss at me in French, so I've learned that. I asked her to look at this, and we figured out who the company was. This was a hospital here in France. And what this was this hospital offered a kiosk. I guess if you want to use the phone or watch movies, it was pay. And so the vendor who created this, who offered that service, decided that they would need access to do software updates. And again, I found this out because of responsible disclosure. If we find these, we call the companies and let them know, the organizations. One of the actual techs decided, instead of worrying about having to remember a password or going on site here, let's just create an anonymous FTP site in which the tech and everybody else in the world could actually connect to this system and, for him, update the system. For everybody else, have access to all of the health records, credit card information, patient records. It was extremely, extremely disturbing. These are not fun phone calls to make, and especially after the language barrier. The fact that when I finally got to the IT director and we were actually able to discuss it, there's certain words that even if you don't know what they mean, you can figure it out by the sense of urgency. As we go through our discussion here, what I would like for you to remember is this is real. This is not anything that was made up. It's very easy to think of this as what we would say the boogeyman's. Scary stories you tell to get your budget in place. This is real life. This is exactly what is happening out there on a regular basis. I heard someone earlier say it, and I'm going to reiterate it. There are two types of companies. There are companies that have been breached and know it, and there are companies that have not been breached, or that have been breached but do not know it. The question is which company are you? Your vendors, your clients, which company are they? And paranoia is a little good in this field. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the panel. Thank you.